So today's shop project is going to involve the chain guard on the MT09. We're going to take a piece of carbon fiber, trim off all the little tabs that go on the top of it, install the carbon fiber, do a thorough sanding and prep, and then take it out and hopefully get this part really in the final coat of clear so that tomorrow we can buff it out and install it. But today we took advantage of an extremely nice day for painting, and it actually in the afternoon it became short sleeve shirt weather, and that paint just dried up perfectly. So it's a great day to share this project, and hope you enjoy the presentation. Now today's project is I wanted to get the chain guard. It needs to be modified. I need to make a piece probably out of carbon fiber. I don't know yet. But I do have the part. I took it down the cellar. I've got to clean it and whatnot. But I think that having this part in blue is just going to add something to the bike the same way the little blue on a front fender did. And because I'm doing this one step at a time, the little details like the side pieces, painting the tail section back black, and we do have the spare windshield, and we're going to be making up some carbon fiber side covers. A lot of little projects left to do before the spring gets here, but there's other things. Because we're running a bed and breakfast now, we're on a little bit different, more casual schedule, a little bit less shop time every day, and some really not good news, bad news, is my neighbors saw the blue heron that was around our pond sitting on the roof of the garage. But he's not down by the pond where I have that electronic thing that's supposed to scare him away. So it's good news, bad news. We want to work on that chain guard today. Now Luciano's tank is drying up just perfectly. I'll be bringing that in the cellar later today once I reorganize the table. And to say I'm happy the way these silver wheels came out. Now here we are. I mixed the gold paint for the Ninja wheels. And this is the experimental paint that has really no colored paint. It has the silver in the clear, the 4-to-1 clear. And to be honest, I think they both look pretty good. Had them out in the sun the other day, had a photo shoot. It's not very sunny out there today. I don't think we'll be doing any pictures. But I was really happy with every part of this so far. And there's still 8 or 10 little projects I want to do before the spring actually gets here. But I'm doing them one by one. I'm trying to share them in a methodical way. And the biggest thing, I want to make side covers here. I've made patterns, I've done everything. And I haven't really finalized how I want to make it, because what happens, the seat is, your leg actually rubs on this. So this is like a little protector, a little to keep you from wearing out the paint on the frame, I guess. So I really have to stay inside of that, where I really would have liked to come on the outside. But that's a whole nother project, and we'll be covering it. We'll be making it out of carbon fiber, just like the mini. Well, we made the side covers for this and the piece under the nose. Making carbon fiber parts is always a lot of fun. But the most fun is knowing that maybe a short time from now, we'll be out riding on a regular basis, not these hit or miss rides we get in a frozen tundra. So just wanted to show for people like Midgley that have ponds. Chuck Holsapple has a pond. We have these 2 electronic things here. They seem to have, they've kept the heron away from here. Either a blue heron or an egret, I'm not sure what he is. Big giant bird, as big as I am. So this is the way the chain guard that comes with the bike. And boy, when I bought the bike, was I in a rush to get rid of that tail light behind the tire thing. And there was 10 pounds, I think 9 or 10 pounds of just things that had to go off the bike. And it's all unsprung weight. So the first thing, I've got to clean the part. Number one, get it over to the slop sink and get this part immaculately clean. Plenty of simple green, because even though we use chain wax, there's still a little bit of goop in there, and I don't want anything disturbing the paint. Step 1, always a thorough cleaning with simple green and a good rinse. Get the part dried off with a hairdryer, and we're ready to go. So after all the simple green cleaning and drying, I usually like to hit the part with a hairdryer, get rid of any moisture that's on it. I wanted to look at the part and see all these little tabs and little things that guide the wires. They're there for the wire when you have that tail light in the back of the back wheel. And by taking all that stuff off the bike, and if you only knew what a big job it was, well, a Dremel tool, this is the Harbor Freight, the small Dremel tool, it's under $20. You can get your bits of choice if you buy Dremel ones, or in my case, I got a bunch off Amazon. This is a cut-off wheel, and this is the tool of choice for trimming off some of these parts. Some of them are really, you'll look at it, it looks like a porcupine, doesn't it? And here we are, just cutting them off one by one by one, and it's a little time consuming to do this because I don't want to really gouge the part out. I want it to be nice and flat when I'm done. And you can see the parts that come off of that there. It's a mess, so not much you can do about it. And when they're done, then I can dress that whole top surface off, and that'll probably be ready for the car. Now, if you're looking to buy a bunch of these, I found them on Amazon, bags of the little sanding drums and little polishing things. Very inexpensive. I was amazed how cheap they were. Now, I need the sanding drum with some relatively rough paper to grind down everything. I want to get that whole surface flat. I'm going to grind off all those tabs. It's something I have to do very carefully because I don't want to put big gouges in it if I don't have to. But I do want to have the surface etched and rough so that the epoxy gets a good grip on that. It's a fine line here, and it's just a little time consuming to do that. Now the next step on this is to get some sanding blocks. In this case I have a wooden one and some 180 grit paper, and I want to dress that off. I want to get that as smooth as possible, but I do want to leave it rough. I don't want to have it sanded like it's a piece of glass. I want it to have a nice etch because we're going to be attaching a piece of carbon fiber to that plastic, and that's sometimes a tough thing to do to get the epoxy to bond correctly. I'm making just out of ordinary masking tape, making a pattern of the piece of carbon fiber that I'm going to want to cut, and I have a piece in stock. I'm hoping I can use it to my advantage, but I wanted to see roughly what that part was going to look like. It's always good to make it a little bit oversized, and it's always good to make a pattern first. Don't cut the original carbon fiber until you know the pattern is pretty accurate. So we come up with a dilemma here, and I don't know exactly yet. Every one of these parts is a one-of-a-kind thing. I have the carbon fiber left over from the last time I made this, and let me explain what the dilemma is. This is one of the patterns for the side cover piece. So when I was very careful making up those little frame covers, I made sure I left enough that I can just get that part. So I don't want to destroy that. And I have another frame cover. Now this doesn't fit, so it's not going to be possible. Those two are out. So the choice is, when I go to make this part, and this is why I made the tape pattern, I want to see if I can get this piece and that piece out of the same piece. And it'll be very lucky if we can. If not, we'll make up some more carbon fiber, but I need to know if I can get this piece out of this. And boy, if this works out, will I be happy. It'll make my job a lot easier. Okay, so I can get that here. That's pretty much what I need to do. And will I have enough left over? So it looks like it's my lucky day. Now, I'll cut this piece out of carbon fiber, make it a little bit oversized, glue it in place, and then trim it while it's in place, put the final little edges on it and everything. And this'll cover this. Now, the reason I'm doing this, and maybe some people are saying, well, why don't you just Bondo in the holes? You know what's going to happen if you Bondo in these holes? At some point in time, this is taking a beating in the back of the bike. It's going to crack or show. If I put this piece on here, it'll be flat, perfectly flat. It'll reinforce this a little bit, and when I'm done, I can blend it right in. And this whole part is going to be sanded with 400 sandpaper, and because it's plastic, I'll have to put primer sealer and maybe several coats of primer on it, because there's a lot of sharp, rough edges. But I want this piece to be like a little jewel mounted to the bike, not something that just looks like you bought it and just glued it on. Well, we're willing to spend the time it's going to take to do this right. So on a previous video, we have made this carbon fiber material from cloth and resin, West Systems resin, with the clear 207 hardener. Now what's nice to know about this, to make a piece like this, very simple. You don't need vacuum bagging equipment, any of the high-tech resins that are toxic. This is all a very easy process to do, and it's on a previous video. You would type in my name in quotation marks once you're in YouTube. then just the subject carbon fiber, and you're all set to go. And this outline now, I'll outline this with 1/8" tape. I'm going to cut it with a jigsaw and leave it a little bit oversized and do the final trimming by hand. Now, from being a modeler almost my whole life, laying out patterns and making little things like this, relatively simple. And it's a skill that once you see it once, you can go do it pretty easily. Nothing secret about it. The Dremel saw, you'll eat up a lot of blades cutting carbon fiber, so it's always a good idea to buy some extra blades and run the saw on a slow speed. When you're all done, that thing is like a razor blade. It's like picking up a box of razor blades. If you don't like splinters, be careful. That's all I say. And get it sanded smooth. That's the big trick, as soon as possible. Okay, so now the next trick on this is, I don't want to see how much has to be trimmed. If anything, very little. And I can go over to the belt sander and trim off all these edges, get everything really nice and straight. And then get this in really good alignment and chamfer off the top edge. And then the rest of that hand sanding, everything, the final fit after it's glued in place, will really have to be done by hand. And a belt sander dresses off the edges real nice. So I don't get... Now this is rough trim to fit. That's rough. I've got to roughen up the back of this and then get this put in with some 5-minute epoxy. Then I can get the final trim on everything with a sanding block before I declare victory on this. Yeah, that'll be fine. It's oversized in every dimension, so I should be able to just block sand in very, very conveniently. Now, it's always important to have the surface rough, sanded, have a good etch if you can do anything with epoxy. This is 5-minute epoxy, so by the time I get a cup of coffee down the hatch, this will be ready for the final sanding. And this is 5-minute clear weld made by JB Weld, of course. And what's good about this is within 5 or 10 minutes, this will be ready to do the sanding. So this is several minutes of video condensed down to mix in the epoxy, number one. And of course it's 5-minute dry time. It's usually about 10 minutes because my shop is usually a little cold. I want to spread it out, but I want to get a good bond. I want it to be as solid as can be. Because anytime you bond in carbon fiber to plastic, two dissimilar materials can be a problem. A good etch ensures that you're going to get the best bond possible. Now, I use either acetone, alcohol is okay, isopropyl alcohol is good, just to clean up anything that oozes out. Here I got Q-tips oozing out here, and acetone is a good way to clean off the part, and of course clean any tools you have before you put them away. But in the end, once it tacks up, and I don't want to rush this because again the shop conditions are chilly, then I'll just take the hairdryer, warm it up just enough, get it to set, and then right then and there, when you can't move the part, let it sit for another 5 minutes. Now I had to make a little vise to hold this part while I was working on it. The vise, a little machinist vise, that worked out good. But a lot of times working on a part like this, you need 3 hands or you need somebody to help you. All right, so for the next step of this, we need a hard block. This is even a bigger hard block. And some relatively rough paper to get that joint smoothed out. And then any filling we have to do, we can do with Bondo, because it'll be plenty strong. And anytime I'm using sandpaper and sanding blocks and shaping and leveling, I'm really in my comfort zone. Now the final sanding, 400, wet and dry, get the whole part ready for the first coat of primer. It may need 2 because what we're having here, I'm going to have to sand a lot of these radius edges. A lot of these edges are razor sharp because it was an unfinished part that never had paint on it. And what will happen when we put that self-etching primer on, it's going to have all little hairs in it. So we'll probably sand that first coat of primer down. But everything we're going to do from this point on is 400. Oh, it's always amazing to me how many skills you have if you've ever been a modeler, that you wind up being able to transpose, or they call it crossover technology. You can use that right away if you're doing custom motorcycle parts. So actually, there's a lot of other skills you can use it for. Now the whole thing here is we're painting plastic. We want primer, sealer.
Make sure if you're doing plastic, you put at least one coat. In this case, I think we might put 2 coats. And the big thing is the sealer. That'll keep a good bond on the plastic.
Now, I always want the primer coats to go on thin. Several thin coats, not one big giant glocky.
And that can sit there for about 20 minutes. In this temperature, it takes a little longer. In the summer, it would be quicker. And we're going to get a second coat of primer on that. See if there's any rough spots once that kicks off.
Now, in between coats, I just dust, very light sanding, a dust sanding I call it, to get out any of the little hairs, because when you're using a primer on plastic, there's always the little hairs that come up through the primer, and you got to get rid of them. Now, the general rule with primer is really just glue. It's not really made to be paint. So I try to get the thinnest coats I can, and if there's still any flaws in the paint, just sand that spot, put a little more primer on it. But in the end, I don't want to wind up having 4 or 5 coats of primer. I want it to be one very thin coat that basically has no flaws.
Hey, ready to spray the Chromax blue? That's drying up beautifully.
Now, the Chromax usually covers very well, and I'm very comfortable putting it on in thin coats. Now, if we were painting a car, yeah, you could use a big spray gun and blow it on, but for these little parts, the little spray gun, and doing it, it's still relatively chilly out. I mean, it's probably 50 degrees now. So, thin coats in cold weather are the way to go.
All right, that's going to dry at least a half an hour in this temperature. Maybe in the background you can even hear there's sport bikes out today. It really warmed up this afternoon. What crazy weather we're having. Now, we'll get the clear mixed up, and we'll be ready to put clear on that half hour, 45 minutes. And this is absolutely, I don't even know if there's enough to make a batch. We're running really low on the hardener. I think we'll get just enough to do this, and then we're going to have to pop for another gallon.
Well, this first coat of clear, again, thin coats. When you think I'm putting on 20 coats, they're very, very thin coats. And in this temperature, and it really is still a little chilly out there. I don't know. I was having trouble deciding if I wanted to wear a flannel shirt or not. And then I'd take it off and I'd be cold. But first coat's laid down nice. This temperature is really great.
That's going to sit there about a half an hour. We'll come back to it and get the second coat of clear on. Notice I'm putting it on very, very thin, like out of an airbrush. A lot of thin coats.
Now, I almost ducked a bullet here. Well, I did duck a bullet. I had put the part on the table. I went downstairs to do some stuff. And when I came out, the part was on the other side of the table. The wind had blown. I didn't realize, even with the pliers on it, it was like a little sailboat walking. If I was downstairs another 10 minutes, it would have been in the stones. Anyway, I'm going to go put the end of the clear on this, and boy, this has been a long day. That wind was howling, holy moly. I'm so used to painting with the wind, but it's still a pain. Still, it would be nice to have Jay Leno's garage. It was a great feeling by day's end. I know I got this whole thing done in one day, and hopefully tomorrow get it buffed and put back on the bike, but that's for another day. Today, to get the paint on and having dealt with this wind for the whole afternoon, knowing it's going to be in the garage drying tonight, good feeling.
Right, this morning, this was a flat black chain guard. Looked like a porcupine on top. The carbon fiber part worked out pretty well, I have to admit. I think that's working out. That's about as good as it gets. It's going to sit in the garage overnight, and tomorrow we'll see if it's totally dry, put it by a heating vent, and buff it out, put it back on a bike.
That's always amazing to me how you get rid of something that's painted flat paint, or even worse, flat black. And to me, of course, it's all subjective. It's all in the eye of the beholder. But to me, I like the bike a lot better. Every time I paint something that was flat black blue, I feel like the bike looks better. I'm not sure if you do, but even if you don't, we could still be friends. So with this part, at least the paint work on it done, I can rearrange the project table now and try to figure out what the sequence of the next few projects is going to be. But what I always do at the end of every day, I look back. The day I bought the bike, Luciano and I went down and got the bike, and it had this tail light on the back of
I don't know what you would call it, snow shovel. And of course, I knew I was going to change that out right away, so that was not a big deal. But as this evolved, there were so many things. Now that I have the bike 10,000 miles and I look back, so many things along the way. Painting the side covers, painting the tail section, the frame covers, the polishing the exhaust, and the biggest thing, of course, the silver wheels. But every part of this has been something that one step led to the next step. Here, the white fender. Boy, the white fender used to make me crazy. Now I have it with the wheels both in silver. I know the Chainguard is going to add a little bit of detailing to the back of the bike, a little bit of make it look more complete. And I think this Chainguard worked out pretty good. But this is why having all those pictures, when I do those, take pictures in the driveway, every time I change something or paint something or modify it, or I like to go take a bunch of pictures, put them on my computer, go get a cup of coffee, sit down here or get a snack or whatever, and just take a look at what's the next step on this evolution of this bike. Because when I bought the bike, and when Karen graciously bought it for my birthday, I knew about the performance of the MT09. And I knew no matter which version I bought, even if I bought the flat black version, ultimately I was going to want to change it and make it my own. I think that's something we all want to do. And I think that's just part of the fun of motorcycling. Part of the thing we share, the passion for motorcycling, and being able to have an audience that goes worldwide, even in Romania and Australia now. That's just a wonderful thing to be able to share, and to be able to share for free. Imagine if you had to put stamps on all these pictures. Anyway, I like to dream, and as the late George Venturini always reminded me, dreams are free. And in my case, a lot of the dreams I've been able to make come true, and I've been able to share them, maybe even share them with you. The dreams of things that you dream about just before you go to bed at night. So if you enjoyed the video, I hope you share it with your friends. And of course, I hope, most of all, that we'll see you tomorrow. And thanks again for watching.